Thank you, Matt, and good afternoon all. Welcome to the Vale Glamorgan Council's Cabinet meeting, the last one of this year, on the 19th of December 2024. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett, and Chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale Glamorgan Council and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. We're, as usual, using the Council's hybrid platform, so the usual reminders that the meeting's being live streamed and recorded, and will be uploaded to the Vale Glamorgan Council's website as soon as practicable after the meeting. Participants in the chamber should ensure their microphone is not activated, and remote attendees should mute themselves when not speaking to avoid any background noise or feedback. And for the benefit of myself and other councillors that are laid low with coughs, etc., mute yourself if you need to cough. So anyone wishing to speak should either raise their hand or use the request to speak function. The chat function is used solely to highlight any technical issues or attract the attention of Democratic Services officers. So without further ado, we can move on to the agenda proper. If I can just move this onto my second screen. Super. We first of all have any apologies for absence, and I think we have everybody here today, so we don't have any apologies for absence.
No, everyone is present and connected to the meeting today. Thank you, Chair. Super,
thanks, Matt. Then agenda item 2 is minutes. We've got 2 lots of minutes to approve today. The first for the meeting on the 28th of November and the 5th of December. We need to make a slight amendment to the minutes for the 28th of November. They don't record Councillor Wilson as being present. Yet if you actually look down to the minute in relation to the draft tree strategy, he spoke, so that was a bit magic. So if we can make that amendment to make sure that Mark's included, that would be good.
Thank you, Chair. If Cabinet are happy to agree that amendment to those meetings and they're a correct record, we'll obviously make sure that those amendments are recorded.
Yeah, super. So if I can move both sets of minutes as a true reflection with the aforementioned amendment, I'll move.
And I will second.
Thank you, Gwyn.
Thank you.
So we've got a few references before us today. The first one.
Apologies, Chair. Sorry to interrupt.
I haven't done declaration of interest, have I?
Just to confirm, there was declarations of interest for the meeting, but none were formally received for this meeting. So it's just to note that for the minute.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, I was getting ahead of myself. We can then therefore go on to the references. And agenda item 4 is a reference from the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of November. And that's in relation to the Corporate Asset Management Plan annual update. It was I think corporate assets always involve quite a depth of discussion, but mostly it was around some of the proposed ways forward, sort of discussion about the Docs Office and how that is at the moment. There was also discussion about the Levelling Up Fund and the discussions of what's going forward with Levelling Up. Hang on, I'm just going to shut my door because it's very noisy here. Sorry, the joys of not joining Cabinet from the office. Yeah, so there was discussion about that. There was also discussion about community asset transfers, something that we're hoping to take forward and something that if we can make the process less complex, that would be excellent. So a fairly straightforward meeting. There were a couple of recommendations by the committee. One was just to note the reference, but there was a request that Cabinet consider that where there are small parcels of council land surplus to use and of minimal market value, that could be earmarked for the benefit of community organisations to use for growing, that consideration is given to that. I have no objection to that whatsoever. So if when we are looking at those, that could be given consideration, that would be great. So on that point, I would move that we agree the recommendation from the committee, and happy to move. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Then we can go on to agenda item 5. That's another reference from the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee. And that's the, hang on, for some reason, it's not moving on in my computer. I will be with you shortly. Right. Yes, this is the next two are related to the carbon management plan, and it was referenced from Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee. And there was actually quite a depth of discussion. I thought that the discussion led by our officers was hugely detailed and very insightful. I thoroughly enjoyed listening in, and I think anybody that wasn't able to would probably enjoy watching it on iPlayer later on, in terms of what we were trying to achieve and where we are on that path. I think it's fair to say that it is a hugely ambitious target, and that was something that was actually commented on at the committee. But in terms of where we are moving towards it within financial constraints, that we were one of the first councils in Wales to declare a climate emergency, and we remain committed to move forward with that. The recommendations that the Scrutiny Committee came forward with were, first of all, that they noted the report, and then they said that I just lost it again. The Cabinet considers focusing its approach on behavioural change as a dedicated work stream, and researches the contribution that behavioural change could have on the council's meeting its net zero targets. I think that our officers are very much working along those lines, so I'm happy to note that comment. And I think that in terms of the amazing progress that's been made in things like waste and recycling, which has led to us being one of the leaders in terms of recycling in Wales, and as a consequence, the world. A lot of that comes down to the adaptation of our residents and their support with that activity. So I think that very much behavioural change is a way forward for all of us, because it's going to mean a lot of changes for us. I think we note that as it's already in there, and we can see where it goes from there, and we can be mindful of that as we move forward. So I'm happy to move that we note those recommendations.
And I'll second those.
Thank you. Can't see anybody else wanting to come in. Let's just... And agenda item 6, this was actually went alongside. It was a separate agenda item on the corporate performance and resources meeting on the 20th of November, and actually there had been a response report compiled by the Centre for Wales Centre for Public Policy, and it was actually quite interesting that. Just get it to move on again. There we are. Although the Wales Centre for Public Policy is what it says, it's a Centre for Public Policy rather than a Centre for climate emergency or zero carbon or that sort of thing. But they will look at public policy and see whether or not the steps that are being proposed actually look as if they are going to deliver the results that we want. And I thought it was very rewarding to hear that they said that on the whole, the actions proposed in the document appeared realistic and reflected a well thought through series of actions intended to reduce operational emissions across scopes 1, 2 and 3. They recognise the difficulty in regard to costs and said that fully costed programmes would be required. Well, yes, I think we know that, but this was before the budget was set. It was interesting that I actually met the researchers the following day in a separate meeting and was able to discuss it further. So it was a constructive document. In terms of the recommendations that were agreed by the Scrutiny Committee on that day, they noted the Cabinet reference, they noted the reference from the Wales Centre for Public Policy, and they said that that having regard to comments made at the meeting, Cabinet be requested to consider the following: to look at alternative funding options that climate bonds represent, to look at the additional possibilities with planning considerations that the report refers to, and to consider holding climate conversation events across wards within communities in the Vale of Glamorgan in order to speak with residents to seek their views on what they consider need to be looked at in their areas and to raise public awareness of the plan. And I think that what we should be doing with that, I know that our officers were present for the discussion, and I think I would put that through to the Project Zero team to consider those comments by the Scrutiny Committee. So they also said that they passed their thanks to the Wales Centre for Public Policy for their consideration of the plan, and I would echo those as well. So if we can, if I could move that the recommendations and recommendation 3 are passed over to the Project Zero team for their further consideration, and I'd move.
And I'll second that as well.
Apologies. Agenda item 7 is the Glamorgan Heritage Coast Advisory Group. It's a meeting report. This is attended by a range of councillors and other bodies. And very much like we often get reports of meetings for the Cardiff Bay Advisory Committee, very, very similar in the depth of information that it's possible to have from it. I could really enjoyed being a member of it in previous administrations. So the types of updates that they had was work on the work of the rangers on the Heritage Coast, also the Vale Coastal Project, which was looking at the protection of the coastline and engagement activity with local stakeholders, etc. I'm just trying to find out how I can move my screen on. For some reason, it doesn't want to move. There we are. I've got that. There were a few matters raised by Bridgend County Borough Council because obviously we share Heritage Coast with them. Natural Resources Wales weren't able to attend the meeting, sadly. And so an update on the Glamorgan Coastal Community Capacity Building Fund was deferred until the following meeting. There was also discussion about the length of the South Wales section of the coastal path. And what I wasn't aware of was it covers 7 local authority boundary areas, stretching approximately 180 miles. So maybe an opportunity to go out and explore over the Christmas break. So having looked at that, I think that there's nothing for us to specifically act on. So I would move that we note the minutes of the meeting.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. And there aren't any comments from anyone, so we can move on to the next item. So the next few items that we have, if I can get the agenda item up, is I will be with you shortly. First of all looking at the council tax base for 2025-26. It's one of those arrangements we have to do every year, but at the same time it's fairly complex. It's part of the regulations that we have to follow. Every council has to follow, and it's used by councils and bodies that also are part of council tax arrangements to set precepts. So going right the way back to 2005, council agreed that the setting of the council tax base should be delegated to Cabinet for approval, and that's why it's come to us today. A certified draft copy of the report was submitted to Welsh Government to meet the deadline of the 15th of November 2024. And this figure needs to be confirmed by Cabinet in order to meet the deadline of agreeing the final council tax base by the 31st of December 2024, in line with current regulations. The final ratified tax base must then be returned to Welsh Government by the 7th of January 2025. The amount calculated by the Vale Glamorgan Council as its tax base for the next financial year, that's 25-26, is 63,970. So it's the equivalent of 63,970 sort of Band D dwellings. The tax base for each town and community council within the Vale of Glamorgan area is contained within the report, and it always sounds very complicated. The calculation of the tax base is achieved by taking the total number of properties within the Vale of Glamorgan area, accounting for sort of discounts, reductions, exemptions, and premiums, all sorts of different factors, and converting them into the total number of Band D equivalents. That's properties that are classified as Band D. The calculation of the tax base is based on the data that was available as of the 31st of October 2024 and assumes a collection rate of 97.1%, which is unchanged from the last year. the council tax base, as we said, other precepting organisations, the council tax base will be used by the council to calculate the council tax base for next year, and also by the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales, and levying bodies such as town community councils to apportion precepts from the 1st of April 2025. So, as I said, it's quite straightforward, but it just appears complicated. And I'm just trying to. Something has gone slightly wrong with my computer, and so Matt, for some reason I've lost the recommendations on this report.
Would you like me to read out the recommendation so that it's in front of Cabinet for consideration?
Hang on, let's see if I've done it. Yes, please. That page, for some reason, seems to have disappeared.
No problem at all. Obviously, as per the published report.
Oh no, sorry, I have got it.
Wonderful.
I found it. For some reason, my computer was only showing every other page, but I have it. That's great. So the recommendation is that, pursuant to this report and in accordance with the local authorities' calculation of tax-based regulations, the amount calculated by the Vale of Glamorgan Council as its council tax base for the year 2025-26 shall be, and that's for the whole area, 63,970, and for the area of town and community councils, it's as laid out in the table on page 2 of the report, and I'd so move.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Sandra. And I can't see any dissent, so we're happy to agree that the agenda item 9 is council tax premiums on long-term empty properties and second homes. Just moving that up. So this report is largely procedural again, given that we had a consultation on it and in December 2022, and the further consideration given during budget setting last year as well. The report confirms, as required by regulation, that the council confirms there are no discounts against long-term empty properties and second homes. Having reflected on the more measured approach of applying council tax premiums as a stepped increase, the council has decided to continue with the approach to make and continue with the introduction of the 200% long-term empty homes premium as agreed last year, as well as continuing the second home premium that came into effect from the 1st of April 2024. So it's again, it's fairly straightforward. It's moving on from the report that we took last year and the consultation from December 2022. So there are 6 recommendations, and the first one is that the policy not to grant any level of discount for unoccupied dwellings that have remained so for 6 months, which was agreed for 2024, be agreed for 2025-26. Secondly, that the long-term empty properties premium of 100% agreed by full council on the 6th of March 2024 for the 2024-25 financial year continue for such properties from 2025-26 that remain so for the period up to but not including 24 months. 3, that the long-term empty property premium of 150% agreed by full council on the 6th of March 2024 for the 2024-25 financial year continue for such properties from 2025-26 that remain so for a continuous period of 24 months up to but not including 36 months. 4, that as agreed by full council on the 6th of March 2024, a premium of 200% be introduced from the 1st of April 2025 for long-term empty properties that have remained as such for a continuous period of 36 months or more. 5, that the premium of 100% for periodically occupied properties for the 2024-25 financial year agreed on 6th of March 2024 be reaffirmed and continue for 2025-26. And 6, that the report be referred to full council for final consideration. And I move.
And I'll second those recommendations.
Thank you. And again, no one else speaking. So agenda item 10, a very quick item. And this is actually purely the council tax precept dates. That's where we collect money through council tax on behalf of other people, and it's how at what time periods we actually pass that on. So the council tax precept dates report sets out the periods where payments will be paid to the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales and to the town and community councils during 2025-26. And the details for that are under paragraph 2. So the recommendations for this are twofold: that the payment due to the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales be paid in 12 equal instalments on the last working day of each month, and secondly, that payment due to town and community councils be paid in 3 equal instalments on the last working days of April, August and December 2025. And I move.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Again, that's very straightforward. The agenda item 11 relates to the council tax reduction scheme, and the scheme and what comes under the council tax reduction scheme and prescribed requirements Wales, and that basically specifies that every financial year local authorities need to consider whether they revise or replace their existing scheme, and any revisions or replacement schemes must be made and adopted by full council no later than the 31st of January in readiness for the forthcoming financial year. And local authorities are required to carry out a consultation exercise involving anyone likely to have an interest before a scheme is made. The council tax reduction scheme provides support for those on low income towards paying their council tax liability, and the scheme regulations allow us to provide additional support to residents above the default scheme set by Welsh Government. So the council will increase the amount of time we award an extended payment for which allows someone to move into work without their council tax reduction award changing. So if somebody gets a job, there might be a sort of an amount of leeway in terms of the timing before they have to pay full council tax. That the council will fully disregard war disablement and war widows' pensions above the statutory disregards. The council will increase the amount of time that a backdate of claim can be awarded for. And also the discretions form a minor element of about £46,000 of the overall scheme, which overall costs 12.3 million in the current financial year. So there are 3 recommendations before us, and I must be honest, I'm starting to struggle. So I would like to move the recommendations as laid out on page 2 of the report. And basically that's it. If I can move recommendations 1 to 3 on page 2 of the report.
And I'll second those.
Thank you. So that's passed. And then we can move on to agenda item 12. That is over to the Cabinet Member for Social Care and Health, and it's corporate safeguarding.
Thank you, Chair. This is a midterm report. It's a regular report that comes through to the Cabinet and the Council. As you can see from the summary, there is a corporate responsibility to ensure that there are effective arrangements in place for safeguarding children and adults at risk. And this report provides a mid-year update on the effectiveness of those arrangements and the developments to date. A corporate safeguarding group ensures that there is a scrutiny and assurance of corporate safeguarding arrangements. If I just quickly go through the report, taking that we've all read it, and just for the wider public awareness, the background is that there's 2 pieces of legislation that really emphasise the safeguarding. We've got the Social Service and Wellbeing Wales Act 2014, and this was an introduction of a duty to report, which means that the safeguarding procedure and everything, corporate safeguarding policy is brought to attention of all staff about this duty. And the second piece is working together to safeguard people guidance under Part 7 of the Act, which provides guidance on corporate safeguarding for the Council. And this provides advice on what should happen if an individual has concerns about the well-being or welfare of a child or an adult at risk. The key considerations in this report is that the Corporate Safeguarding Group continues to place focus and takes a strategic overview of safeguarding. One key thing that I need to emphasise is that the Corporate Safeguarding Group meets on a quarterly basis. It has members from each of the directorates, housing, place, education and social. So all of these, and obviously policy with HR as well. So each of those are members they've got membership within the safeguarding group to monitor, to make sure that it's a corporate-wide concern. In particular, you'll notice that within the report it talks about safer recruitment data, and this is one of the key areas that we make sure. Clearly, the education is one particular area of work that we have a lot of teachers that are in the dealing with children, so that's something that clearly needs to be kept an eye on. There was a recommendation from an internal audit, and that took place during 23-24, and the Corporate Safeguarding Group regularly update progress against specific actions, and they have identified officers responsible for taking forward specific areas. And within those specific areas are things like developing the Group A training for those who are unable to access our IDEV platform, making sure that we've got good records of that training, and also update the corporate safeguarding policy. And lastly, review DBS renewals and updates. Okay, I've already mentioned that we've got appropriate cross-director representation. There is also a lead member for safeguarding, which is representing the corporate safeguarding group, and the membership and their responsibility of those are all can be seen on the Corporate Council's safeguarding page. There's corporate policy is something which is clearly outlines everyone's responsibility. It's not just certain members of the council. As I said, I mentioned the duty, but also it includes all employees, volunteers, school governors, elected members and contractors, and they all need to be informed of the induction training and of their responsibilities to comply with this safeguarding policy. This was being updated and has been shared across all areas of the council, and again, it's hosted on our corporate safeguarding page on StaffNet. There are identified needs within each directorate, but we also have a ladder, so a person's responsible overall, and this is fulfilled by the operational manager for safeguarding service outcomes within the social services. Excuse me a moment. Right. I've just had the benefit of my cat change the screen, so apologies for that. So if I'll continue, I've mentioned safer recruitment. We are compliant, and data records shows that we're compliant at very early stages, particularly in the September areas where we have changeover in school teachers. That's been an issue in the past, a couple of years ago, but it's certainly something that corporately we're really on top of. I've mentioned the training already, and the safeguarding team have ensured that we've got a dashboard for that, and so that's quite useful. If I just go to the recommendations, from the report that the Cabinet considers the work that's been undertaken to improve corporate arrangements for safeguarding and protecting children and adults. 2, the Cabinet continues to receive 6 monthly reports on work carried out to monitor corporate safeguarding arrangements and its effectiveness. And 3, that the report is referred to all scrutiny committees for consideration. I'm hoping that within that it gives a wider understanding of the importance of the corporate responsibility. So I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie, and very happy to second that report. Very well, it's crucial, isn't it, to our operations to ensure that we have effective safeguarding in place. So, Rhiannon's got her hand up as well. I'll step back, as I should imagine she'll want to second this.
Thank you. Yes, yes, I will want to second this. I think bearing in mind recent developments in other parts of the country, this is so important that all of the staff, sorry, my screen is wobbling about, that all of our staff take this very, very seriously. And I mean, I would include councillors in this, that we need to be so watchful. And I think that the ramification of things that have happened recently in the legal field is going to change this. I think is going to make it even more important than it is at the moment. But I'm very pleased to see the report, and I'm very pleased that people take it so seriously. You know, we have so many vulnerable people that we are responsible for and take responsibility for, that it is absolutely essential that these kind of processes are in place, that they are properly adhered to, that they are regularly reviewed, and that people are recognise their responsibilities in this field. Thank you.
If I can come just back on that, Chair, please. Very, very right. And one of the key aspects of the Corporate Safeguarding Group is to look at practice reviews on cases that have happened and any learning that come forward. So, yeah, really appreciated for that input there from Councillor Birch.
Super. So that's moved by Eddie and seconded by Rhiannon. There's no dissent, so that's agreed. Super. And then it's back to Eddie again for another report, which is to do with the appropriation of 2 properties from housing stock to Social Services Directorate. Another interesting report. Over to you, Eddie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report is split into two parts because of the confidentiality, but you can see from the Part 1 report, it advises of the intention to appropriate 2 properties which are currently within the ownership of the Council's Housing Department, and that's to be moved to the Social Services Directorate. Full considerations are detailed in the Part 2 report on this agenda, and Cabinet has requested to consider these reports in conjunction. So if I just go through the recommendations for this one, the contents of this report be noted and considered in conjunction with the Part 2 report on the meeting agenda, and that use of the Council's urgent decision procedure as set out in Section 1514 of the Council's Constitution be agreed in respect of the recommendations contained within the Part 2. I've jumped to the recommendations, but it talks about in the report, it gives a background. We have from the Vale of Glamorgan Council's Market Stability Report, identifies trends and emerging issues across both adult and children and young people services. And clearly there's a need now for residential in that area to be improved on. And also we're coming across the eliminate profit agenda within children and homes and stuff, so eliminate profit, and so that's going to impact on our provision. So clearly we need to be on the way to do that. We have already got properties at the moment, but this is an opportunity to take on some existing properties within our council's portfolio. Thank you. I so move the recommendations.
Thanks, Eddie. It's something I've always had difficulty with, the thought of children having to move away from their homes if they need to be looked after by the council, because we haven't had facilities. And if these are our children, they should be looked after in the Vale, unless there is a very solid reason why not. So I am absolutely thrilled to second this report, and thank you for bringing that today. I can't see any hands indicating, so that's agreed. Thank you. So we're now on to the report of the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services, and this is related to, oops, hang on. The short version of it is Hackney Carriage Fares. So over to you, Ruba.
Thanks, Liz. This is quite a straightforward report to determine an application which we've received from the Vale Taxes Unite representative body, the body for taxes in the Vale, to vary the current Vale of Glamorgan's our council rate of Hackney carriage fares, of taxi fares. The rate of Hackney carriage fares is the authorised fare that charges to passengers using taxis in the council's area. So you'll see that at the appendices, there are quite a few appendices to this, but basically it sets out the case for this. So this basic rate hasn't risen since 2022. So what will happen while it's come to Cabinet today, in order for us then to allow this to go to the public, to be publicly advertised for the next 2 months, so that we can receive any comments or objections on that, and that will be reported back. But you'll see from the appendices that the rates that will be raised under the various tariffs. So my recommendations this afternoon, I've had 3 recommendations. So firstly, that I'm asking Cabinet to approve in principle the application put forward by Vale Taxes Unite to vary Hackney carriage fares with an implementation date of the 19th of February next year. And that's provided, obviously, that there are no objections. Secondly, that subject to the first recommendation, that the fair variation is advertised in the local press, and that lastly, that subject to no objections being received, delegated authority is granted to the Director of Environment and Housing to agree the fair variation in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services. So I would ask to move this report and those recommendations.
Thanks, Ruby. Yes, I think it's worth noting that it's been quite a while since there've been increases. So I'm happy to second this. And I can't see anybody indicating, so that's agreed. Thank you. Then we've got a report from the Cabinet. Well, we've got two reports from the Cabinet Member for Leisure, Sport and Wellbeing. The first one, I think, is a really exciting report. So this is over to you, Gwyn, for a report on Homeview Leisure Centre, Barry.
Thank you very much, Leader. This purpose of this report is to seek authority to market the property for a range of community uses. Homeview Leisure Centre was returned to the council control in January 2021 as part of the extension agreement for the leisure management contract. The building was used temporarily by Cardiff and Vale University Health Board as a mass vaccination centre during COVID pandemic. The building then returned to the council's control in March 2023. Given the period of time since the last resolution of Cabinet, and in the context of the current reshaping programme, including the reshaping assets and strengthening communities themes, the council is currently reconsidering the long-term future of the asset. Whilst options are considered, officers have been considering a short-term option of offering a short-term lease for a community-related use. The council is aware of the strong interest from the local community in relation to the future of the property. And over the last few years, a number of voluntary and charitable organisations have made inquiries about the future of the site. Cabinet will note that the site is within the Public Service Board project on tackling and preventing deprivation and concentrating, as Gibbonstown is one of the most deprived lower layer super output areas in Barry and Wales. It is therefore proposed that this project will make strong connections with the PSB project, including using the evidence base that has been developed by the project to help inform and selection of the community partner. There's also been very recent expression of interest in this asset by a community group. As there are likely to be a number of potential interested parties who might be interested in the property, it is recommended that the availability of the property via a short-term 5-year lease opportunity is advertised on the open market via a tender process. Any new tenant would be required to demonstrate that the building will primarily be used for community benefit and will also be required to confirm there will be no ongoing cost over the term of the lease agreement to the council in relation to their proposal. The building will be offered in its current condition with full repairing and maintenance obligations passing to the new tenant. It is recommended that an initial 5-year lease be offered to ensure that any ingoing tenants' proposals are viable and also are offering a suitable service to the community, whilst the council consider the long-term future of the asset. The council would consider the position at the end of the 5-year period. However, no assurance will be provided in terms of long-term agreement whilst the council's reshaping assets group consider the long-term future of the asset. The land building area to be offered, attached to Appendix A of the report, Cabinet will note that this excludes the car park that is shared with the Community Enterprise Centre. It is proposed that the marketing will include a brief planning statement with a range of suggested community uses, which are linked to the health and well-being objectives, and bids should have a positive impact on the local community. Now, the financial resources and legal considerations, the bidders will be asked to set out how they will fund capital and revenue costs associated with the running of the building. Any proposal considered will need to be cost neutral for the council. Bidders will also be requested to set out their rental offer in their proposal. There will be resource implications as a result of the recommendation to market this property. Officer time and minor costs associated with the marketing of the property, for example. However, these will be met from existing budgets using current staff resources. The expectation would be that a small saving to the council will be made. The leisure service is currently responsible for a small utilities charge for the vacant building. In addition, there is a potential for a significant business charge saving, as the expectation would be for the ingoing tenant to be responsible for all such costs. It is recommended that any charity group applying for the lease be a registered charity, which could potentially benefit them in terms of business rates, exemptions, reductions as a result of a charity status. I have the following recommendations to make today. 1, the delegated authority is granted to the Director of Corporate Resources in consultation with the Chief Executive, Director of Environmental and Housing Services, and the Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services to market Homeview Leisure Centre by virtue of a 5-year lease opportunity for a range of community-related uses. The delegated authority is granted to the Director of Corporate Resources in consultation with the Chief Executive, the Director of Environment and Housing Services, and the Executive Leader and the Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources to consider the bid proposals, confirm the preferred bidder, and instruct the Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services to draft the lease at the appropriate time. That the Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, be authorised to enter in all necessary documentation in order to complete and execute the lease agreement and any other related documentation required. I move, Leader.
Thanks, Gwyn. I think this is a really exciting initiative, and I know that an awful lot of people have been talking about the future of Homeview, and I think what if this can work, it gives us an opportunity to actually try things out, which through the I mean, it's mentioned in paragraph 2.2, the Public Services Board project at the moment, which has been talking to the local community about the things that they feel that they need. That's not just the Gibbonsdown ward, it's local other wards as well in that area. So to actually say that for the next 5 years that this is going to be available to try out some of those things that local people have said will matter. And also then as we move forward, now that we've had full confirmation of the long-term plans for towns funding, that there are opportunities there to learn from that, to actually deliver initiatives which will deliver for the local community, and ones that the local community have told us are needed. So very, very excited about this and very happy to second it. Thank you, Gwyn.
Yes, it's very important that this is moved along, Leader, because this building has only been used for vaccination centre, very, very worthwhile over the last period. But quite honestly, we need to get this building filled and used.
Oh yes, definitely for the local community. I think that's very very important. So as I said, I'm happy to second, and we don't have any comments, so that's agreed. So
Thank you.
moving on to agenda item, let's have a look. Agenda item 16, and this is also yours, the proposed improvements to the Calcutta and Buttrells recreation sites, Barry.
And this is to provide an update on the proposals for Calcutta and Buttrells recreation sites, Barry, following public consultation and grant application submissions. Following proposals to undertake improvements to the Calcutta and Buttrells recreation sites had potential to deliver new changing facilities and opportunities for more youth activities and provided additional social housing, a public consultation was undertaken. The results of the consultation clearly opposed the building of new housing on what would have been redundant land, and there was a lack of support for new changing rooms on the Buttrell playing field. As part of the consultation feedback, it was suggested that the existing changing rooms could be refurbished and altered to meet the requirements of local football. A condition survey of the existing facilities confirmed that the building has significant issues. Grant applications, as proposed in the original report, were submitted, and whilst the grant application of £500,000 is still active with the Cymru Football Foundation, this is still significantly short of funds required for the element of the scheme. The cost of the scheme has risen significantly since it was first proposed. Additionally, a further grant application for a proposed pump track was rejected by Sport Wales due to the organisation having insufficient funds following their own budget settlement. Therefore, the project is presently on hold due to the responses received as part of the consultation exercise and the lack of available funding to progress the scheme with the housing element of the wider plan. The issues with the provision of changing facilities at the site remain, with demand increasing particularly for women and girls teams. The existing facilities continue to cause concern to meet current requirements, which is a great disappointment because it really will affect the playing of girls and women's football in the town of Barry. Initial evaluation of the site and buildings has been undertaken with the objective remaining to provide quality sport facilities. However, upgrading the existing change rooms, given the cost associated with providing new or refurbished facilities, is not a realistic or sustainable use due to lack of funding available. The current change rooms opened in 1963 after they were built in support by Billy Butlin, gave a big grant to them, and quite simply, we've gone down the years now and they're badly in need of new changing facilities. We're talking over 60 years. And quite simply, in Appendix B of the report, it details there the survey done in the Calcutta. And quite honestly, unless we get new changing rooms in the near future or not too distant future, then the football teams in Barry will have no changing rooms. And that's what we've got to really take into hand. The recommendations this afternoon: 1, the Cabinet notes the results of the public consultation exercise, the increased costs associated with the scheme and the proposals previously considered by Cabinet on 22nd of February 2024 and not progressed any further at this stage. That a further report on the future of the site be presented to Cabinet to outline any other options for the provision of modern facilities to serve the community in the wider area. That the grant application to the Cymru Football Foundation be withdrawn to enable a new bid to be prepared and submitted, if appropriate, that still aims to improve facilities for Barry football clubs. Thank you, Leader. I move that this report.
Thanks, Gwyn. Yes, it is disappointing. It's a shame that these days in order to develop schemes, we have to stitch together all sorts of sources of funding. And if some of those sources fall by the wayside, it can make the whole scheme unsustainable. Whether that's with funding not being available from sporting bodies, or whether or not funding that we can put into it is not available for whatever reason. So we will continue to look at how it can be delivered. It's a shame that that we couldn't provide new facilities, but thanks for the update, and I'm happy to second.
Thank you.
And everybody seems content with that. So yes, that's fine. So today we have two urgent items. This is unusual for us. And one is to do with a Q2 revenue monitoring update, and the second one is linked to the proposed Cardiff and Vale housing partnership scheme. So I'm going to have to move my screens around again now so that I can get the necessary report. Let's move this down to the bottom. Super. So the reason for the report on the Q2 revenue monitoring 2024-25 update report is being provided now, particularly as only last night the Corporate Performance and Resources Committee were actually looking at the original report. We felt that it was a reasonable thing to do, was having received additional funding from Welsh Government in terms of funding for this year, that we should actually make sure that everybody was aware of that. Back in November, when it came to Cabinet, it demonstrated or showed a £14 million unplanned use of reserves and a significant deficit position across schools. So we've since been advised of around 6.15 million of additional grant funding for a range of areas, that's sort of teaching and non-teaching pay, teachers and fire service pension costs, and various other funding streams, which will have an impact on the outturn position in 2024-25. So if you have a look at paragraph 2.2, that actually spells out all the different funding that we've actually got. Of the additional grant funding, the majority has been passported, straight to schools. That's circa 5.1 million, just over, and this is expected to reduce school deficits, and this will need to be worked through and also be updated as part of the Q3 monitoring position. There will also be some additional funding via the Local Authority Education Grant. The balance of the funding that we've had, which is around 995,000 of the additional grant funding, plus additional income in respect of deferred payment arrangements for adult social care and grant funding for reablement, is expected to reduce the in-year unplanned use of reserves to 12.314 million. This also reduces the unplanned use of reserves, and the balances are now projected to stand at 52.377 million on 31st of March 2025. I think we still need to say that the unplanned use of reserves continues to be significant, and the council continues to experience significant pressures in respect of social care. Schools, particularly regarding additional learning needs and school transport, are affected. The steps outlined in the Q2 monitoring report to mitigate the in-year position will remain in place to further reduce the unplanned use of reserves as much as possible. So I said it's a fairly straightforward update report, but we felt that we needed to communicate the changed position. So only one very straightforward recommendation, and that's that the updated position with regard to the authority's 2024-25 revenue budget be noted, and I would move.
I second, Leader.
Thank you, Gwyn. You beat Sandra to it. Sorry, Sandra can do the next one, I would imagine. So I shall move that one down and move my next urgent report up. Just wait for it to open. So yes, this is in relation to the Cardiff and Vale Housing Partnership. It should be noted this is the Part 1 report. There are items related to the actual award of contract which will have to be considered under Part 2 later in the agenda. So going back to 2023, May 2023, there was actually the first consideration of formation of a housing partnership, setting out the background and reasoning for it with Cardiff Council, in effect, economies of scale and shared expertise. So it was a response to the current traditional methods by which social housing schemes are procured and delivered. I think it's fair to be said, since then, the council has delivered quite a number of schemes, but we've tended to deliver them on our own, and we actually want to develop greater levels of social housing. So it was discussed to go into that. There has been a competitive procurement process. This report was actually taken to Cardiff's council, Cardiff's cabinet in the last week, and while the powers are in place for us to either sign this off by emergency powers or similar, we felt it appropriate to bring it to cabinet, hence the urgent report today. So Savills were appointed by the council to look at delivery options and the potential structure for the Cardiff and Vale housing partnership, and they have provided advice and support since. There were a number of bidders that were shortlisted down to 3, and they were notified back in February of this year, and then the process has gone on since then. Final tenders were received on the 19th of August 2024, and there has been a very detailed appraisal of those bids on a wide range of criteria before a decision has been made or proposed. So we'll be going into that in more detail under Part 2. So the recommendations for us at this stage are that Cabinet notes the outcome of the competitive dialogue procurement process which identifies the preferred bidder, and to approve the appointment of the preferred bidder identified under Part 2 as the Council's development partner for the Cardiff and Vale Housing Partnership. And secondly, that the use of the Council's urgent decision procedure as set out in section 1514 of the Council's Constitution be agreed to approve the appointment of the preferred bidder identified under Part 2 as the Council's development partner for the Cardiff and Vale Housing Partnership. As I said, we could have, this needs to be progressed fairly immediately, and so while we could have done it under emergency procedures, we felt we would do it this way and use section 15. So I would move those recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to second this. It's a very welcome report. It's very welcome that we'll actually, now that we have got a preferred bidder set in place, it was very competitive thing. But yes, it'll be good that we'll be able to actually greater levels of social housing be able to be provided for the Vale and for the Cardiff area. So yes, I'd like to second.
Super, thanks, Sandra. And there are no comments, so that's agreed. So we now have, we had only one report under Part 2, but we now have two reports under Part 2 linked to the previous item and also to agenda item 13. These are matters that are considered to be confidential, and therefore the meeting will need to move into private session where such matters can be discussed under Part 2. At this point, I need to ask Cabinet to agree to move to Part 2 and ask the Cabinet Officer to stop the recording of this open session to ensure that no members of the public are present after this point, and only allow relevant parties to remain to hear the detail of the items to be discussed. Following the meeting, the outcome of the Part 2 discussions will be formally captured as part of the minutes of the meeting and will advise all parties of the final decisions of the Cabinet for the relevant items. So therefore, can I formally move Part 2?
Happy to second move Part 2.
Thank you, Sandra. And if I could ask the Cabinet Officer to ensure that only relevant